Hi Yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today is Friday Fun Day, and so I have a really fun and simple project that is really cute for today's project. This is the Beaded BOHO Headband. Isn't it adorable? Now you can make it with the beads or without. This is how it will look without the beads, because we're doing those 3 double crochet clusters and adding the beads to every other row, and it's just gorgeous. We start with a tapered up edge, we do the band, and then we decrease down and stitch it together. It's so pretty, and I chose to go with these colors because I wanted it to kind of look boho. But you can use any colors that you want to. It would be beautiful in striping yarns, ombres, solids of any color, and of course you can use any colors or style of beads that you want. I went with these fun wooden ones and I love it. But we'll talk more about yarns and beads in just a few minutes. Now this headband made as is will fit a 22 to 24 inch head. Keep in mind when you're working that yarn is very stretchy, but if you want to make it smaller you can just not do as many rows in the center. It's a super fun and easy pattern, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. I've been on such a bead thing lately. I love adding beads to crochet, and I even have some more designs coming that I can't wait to share with you. Now you can find the complete pattern with pictures, and as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. All right, what we need to make our beaded boho headband is, of course, just some medium weight number 4 yarn. Now this is from Michael's store. It's their Impeccable. It's just your basic acrylic beige yarn. I wanted to stick with a beige because I think that gives it kind of that feel of wicker or boho. But of course, you can use any colors that you want. It would be beautiful in striping yarn or ombres. Any medium weight number 4 acrylic yarn. Okay, and you're going to need about 1.5 ounces. Now you'll notice I have several different kind of beads here. These are the beads that we're going to use today, which come in this package. I picked this up at Hobby Lobby. It had an assortment of colors and sizes in it. We're using the smaller ones. I measured these. They measure about 1/3 of an inch. And we're going to be using the dark brown, the cream, and the sort of reddish brown. I like the combination of those. These are some beads that are wooden that I picked up at the Dollar Tree for $1.25. They are about, I'm going to say, 1/2 inch. There's no marking on here. But for $1.25, you get 24 wooden beads, and you can see they have nice big holes that our yarn will fit through. Another package that I bought were these, and I picked these up at Walmart. It's just a bag of assorted different types of wooden beads. There's squares, cylinders, circles, ovals, all kinds of shapes. And any of these would work just fine. You don't have to have the same size beads. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to use wooden beads. I just really wanted to for this particular project. You're going to need 12 beads. And these are the ones that I'm using here, these 1/4 inch wooden beads. We're going to be stitching today with an H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle, and I really recommend you use a straight needle instead of one with a bend in it, and that's just to put the beads onto our yarn. And then you can use your bent needle if you want to, but when I've got one out, I just go ahead and just use the same one. And then of course you need a pair of scissors. So I have 12 beads sitting here, and I've threaded my needle onto my working yarn, and what that means is it's to the yarn that I'm going to work with. We're going to thread all our beads on in whatever order that we want to, and then as we crochet we'll move them forward as needed. Alright, so I'm just going to put all 12 of my beads onto my yarn. And this is why I said it would probably be better to use a straight needle opposed to a bent one, because you don't want to have, struggles getting that needle through. Although the holes in these are probably big enough I wouldn't have any trouble. Now I am going to be working with a swatch, and then we'll change over to the actual headband later on in the video. All right, so I have randomly just put my beads on, all 12 of them, because you're going to need 12. Then I'll just take my needle off, and I'm ready to start my crochet project. So I've pushed my beads up a little ways out of the way. We'll be pushing them forward until we need them. So we're going to begin with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then single crochet in those next 2. 1 and 2. That will give us 3 single crochets, and then we'll chain 1. So for our first row, we just have 3 single crochets. We've chained 1. We're going to turn our work, and we're going to work in the back loops only. That's the loops that are on the back side of our work. And we're going to place 1 single crochet in those 3 back loops. 1, 2, and 3. And you'll notice that it makes a little bit of a ridge there. Chain 1, push my beads forward, and turn. Now we're going to increase, so we're going to place 2 single crochets in this first back loop of the next row. Then we'll place 1 single crochet in the next stitch, again working in the back loop, and then 2 single crochets in that last stitch. 1 and 2. And chain 1. So now we have 5 because we increased at the beginning and the end of that row, and we worked in the back loops only. So now we've chained 1, we're going to turn our work, and again work in the back loops only and place 1 single crochet in those 5 stitches. And chain 1. So we did 2 rows with 3 and 2 rows with 5 single crochets. And again, we worked in the back loop only. We've chained 1, we've pushed our beads forward, and now we're going to do the next row. We're going to increase again, so we'll stitch 2 single crochets in that first single crochet, again working in the back loops, then 1 in the next 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 single crochets in that last stitch, and again working in the back loops only. Chain 1, so now we have 7 instead of 5 single crochets. So we'll turn our work and just stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 7. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 single crochets worked in the back loop only, and chain 1. We're going to turn our work. We're going to place 2 single crochets in that first single crochet, again working in the back loops only. 1 stitch in each across until we reach that last stitch. And again, working in the back loops only. All right, now we're to the last stitch and we're going to increase. So we'll stitch 2 in that last stitch and chain 1. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn, and then just stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 9. 8 and 9 and chain 1. And see what we're doing on this particular portion? Let me move those beads again. There we go. We've increased at the beginning and end of each row in order to increase out for the width of our headband. And so now at this point we're at row 8 and we have 9 single crochets across. Working in the back loops only. We've chained 1. We're going to turn our work. We're going to increase again, so we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the first stitch. We'll stitch 1 in each, working across, again, back loops only. And when we get to that last stitch, we're going to increase by stitching 2 single crochets in that last stitch. All right, so 2 single crochets in the last stitch. 1 and 2, chain 1 and turn, and now we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those stitches. And on this row, you're going to have 11. 3, 4, oops, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 single crochets. So we have 11 single crochets at row 10, and now we're going to do this one more time. So we're going to turn our work, increase by 1, so we'll stitch 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 1 in each of those stitches across. Again, stitching in the back loops only. We've stitched across. I'm in that last stitch and I'm going to stitch 2 single crochets. So we have 13 single crochets on this row. We're going to chain 1 and turn and just stitch 1 single crochet in each of those single crochets across. And this is our last row on this end of our headband to stitch in the back loops only. Once we stitch the body of our headband and we go to decrease on the other side, we'll be stitching in the back loops there. But we're not going to stitch anymore on this side or this end of our headband in the back loops only. Alrighty. And at the end of this row, which is row 12, we are going to chain 3. And on row 12, we should finish up with 13 single crochets stitched in the back loop only and chain 3. We stitched a chain 3 and we're going to turn our work. Our chain 3 on this row and every row that we do double crochets on, the chain 3 will count as our first double crochet. Now we're going to double crochet in the next stitch and then double crochet 2 more times each in the next 2 stitches. And that's going to give us 4 double crochets. We're going to chain 1, we're going to skip 2 single crochets, and then in the next stitch, we're going to stitch a double crochet cluster. So yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and only go through the first 2 loops. And we're going to do this 2 more times. And it will look like we have 3 unfinished double crochets, and we kind of do. We're going to yarn over and go through all 4 of those loops and chain 1. And now we're going to do that again. We're going to do a second double crochet, 3 double crochet cluster in that same stitch. And chain 1. Now we're going to skip the next 2 stitches and stitch 1 double crochet in those last 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and chain 3. Alrighty, now on the next row is where we're going to add our first bead, but I want you to see how this looks. We have our chain 3 that counts as our first double crochet, and then we double crocheted in the next 3, chain 1, skip 2, and then in that next stitch we stitched a 3 double crochet cluster, chain 1, and a 3 double crochet cluster. Chain 1, skip 2, and then ended with 4 double crochets. But I want you to see how that cluster looks. Isn't that pretty? All right, and that's the way that row 13 should look. Oh, and don't forget, chain 3 at the end. Now on this next row, we're going to pull our first bead forward. All right, so we're going to turn our work. Our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet, and we're going to double crochet in those next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. Oops. There we go. And chain 1. Now we're going to come over to the chain 1 space in between those 2 3 double crochet clusters. So we're going to stitch our first one in that chain 1 space. Let me get some more yarn here. Now we're going to chain 1 and we're going to pull our first bead forward. Okay, and now we're going to stitch our next 3 double crochet cluster in that chain 1 space. And you'll notice that it automatically pushes that bead to the front of our work. All right, let's finish our row. Chain 1, 1 double crochet in those last 4 double crochet stitches. And chain 3. All right, so from the back it looks pretty much the same, right? But when we turn it over, you can see we have that bead right there in the center of our 2 sets of 3 double crochet clusters. All right, so let's do the next row. Now we're not going to be placing a bead on this row because we're going to place the beads every other row. All right, so our chain 3 counts as our first. We're going to double crochet. Let me move those beads forward so they're not so noisy. Double crochet in the next 3, so we have 4 double crochets because again, our chain 3 counts as our first. We're going to chain 1, and now we're going to go in this chain 1 space. So you're going to have to kind of move the bead forward and go in that space and stitch our 3 double crochet cluster. Chain 1. And now I'm going to go to the other side of the bead and stitch my second double crochet cluster. We're still in that chain 1 space. We're just sort of stitching around that bead so it lays nice. And chain 1. And then we'll go to those last 4 double crochets and stitch 1 double crochet in each of those. All right, let's get these beads out of the way. Keeping the beads out of the way is probably the hardest part of this project. But it's so worth it adding these beads. Now, if you're not a bead person and you don't want beads on this, you don't have to add them. You can still make this beautiful headband using these same stitches without the beads. I just love the effect that the beads have though. All right, so again, we have 4 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochet cluster, chain 1, 3 double crochet cluster, chain 1, and 4 double crochets, and chain 3. All right, let's do the next row. We've chained 3, turn our work, 1 double crochet in the next 3, because again, our chain 3 counts as our first double crochet. Chain 1. Now we're going to go to the chain 1 space between our 2 3 double crochet clusters and stitch our first one. Whoops. There we go. All right, so I've got my 3 unfinished double crochets, yarn over and go through all 3, chain 1, and now I'm going to take my next bead and push it forward. And it will automatically go to the front, and I'll stitch my next 3 double crochet cluster. Whoops, looks like I got a knot here. Got the knot out. We'll finish our 3 double crochet cluster and chain 1, and again that bead automatically is pushed to the front. If it doesn't do that for you, just push it through the chain 1 space to the front. But working on this project with mine, they all just automatically pushed to the front. All right, so now I'm going to stitch those last 4 double crochets. There we go. And chain 3. All right, so again, from the back, you can't see the beads. And if you didn't add beads, that's the way that it would look. It's still very beautiful. And now you can see that I have 2 beads on my headband. So now what we're going to do is we're going to continue to repeat row 15 and row 16 for 20 more rows, alternating every other row. They're really the same because they're stitched the same. The only difference is we're adding a bead every other row. All right, so you'll stitch row 15 without a bead, then row 16 with a bead for 20 more rows, alternating every other row with your beads. So here is my actual headband. The other one was, of course, working off a swatch. Here's my increase rows up through row so that we have 13 stitches. And then, of course, all of my beads every other row. I love how it turned out with the sort of randomness of those beads. And one thing I do want to say is go ahead and use your tape measure and measure to make sure it's going to fit the head that you want to wear it, because we're going to be adding another section just like this that's about 3.5 inches. And so you want to make sure that's going to fit the head that's going to wear it. It will fit a 22 to 24 inch head, and keep in mind yarn is very stretchy, and sometimes as you wear it, it might stretch a little bit. So if you're making this for someone with a smaller head, you may do a few less rows on the middle part before we begin doing the decrease stitches. All right? All right. Now we're going to do the decrease stitches so this end looks similar to this end. Once you've completed the amount of rows that you want for your headband, on your last row, you're only going to chain 1 and turn. And again, you can see the back. If you don't add the beads, that's what it will look like. And it's still, like I said, really pretty. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to put some single crochet stitches. So we're going to go right in that first double crochet and stitch a single crochet in each of those 4. Sorry about the noisy beads. That's what you get when you work with beads. We're going to single crochet in that chain 1 space. We're going to single crochet in the 3 double crochet cluster, single crochet in the chain 1 space, single crochet in the double crochet cluster, then single crochet in the chain 1 space, and then 1 single crochet in each of those last 4. And chain 1. And that should get us 13 single crochet stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 single crochet stitches. So now we chained one, we're going to turn our work, and we're going to stitch in the back loops only, like we did at the beginning of the project here. All right, so we're going to go right in that first single crochet, and we're going to stitch one single crochet in each of those 13, working in the back loops only. And so again, we have 13 single crochets, only this time we worked in the back loops only. We're going to chain one and turn. Now we're going to do a decrease, or stitching 2 single crochets together, and we're going to be doing this in the back loop only. All right, so we're going to go in that first back loop and pull up a loop, then we'll go in the next back loop and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook instead of the 2. Yarn over and go through all 3. So we decreased by 1. And now we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those single crochet stitches across, again working in the back loops only until we reach those last 2 stitches, and then we'll stitch those last 2 together. I've stitched across, stitching single crochets in the back loops only until I reach those last 2 stitches, and we're going to stitch the last 2 together in a single crochet decrease, or stitching 2 single crochets together. And chain 1. So now instead of having 13, we have 11 single crochets. So we chained 1, we're going to turn our work, and we're just going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 11 stitches. And again, we're stitching in the back loops only. So I have stitched across. We have 11 single crochets stitched in the back loop only. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and now we're going to do a decrease stitch at the beginning and end of this row. And again, we're stitching in the back loops only. So we'll stitch our first 2 single crochets together, then we'll stitch our single crochets across until we reach the last 2 single crochets, and then stitch the last 2 together. Here's our last 2, and chain 1. So now we have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches. Chain 1, turn our work, and just stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 9. And chain 1, and you can see how it's gradually decreasing down. Chain 1, turn our work, and now we're going to decrease again. So we'll go in those first 2 stitches, stitch them together, 1 single crochet in each, working in the back loops until we reach those last 2 single crochet stitches. And then we'll stitch those last 2 together. And so now we have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Chain 1, turn our work, and 1 single crochet in each of those 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and chain 1. Now we're going to turn again and stitch the first 2 together. Whoops, lost my loop. Let's do that again. Alrighty. There's our first, stitching the first 2 together. 1, whoops, 2, and 3. And then stitch the last 2 together. Chain 1 and turn, and we'll just stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, chain 1, and then we're just going to repeat this one more time. We'll stitch the first 2 together in a single crochet decrease. We'll single crochet and then stitch the last 2 together. So now we have 3. Chain 1 and turn for the last time and stitch 1 single crochet in each of those 3 single crochet stitches. And chain 1. Now we are going to tie off, but I want you to leave a little bit of yarn on there because we're going to use that to stitch the ends of our headband together. So we'll go ahead and pull that, and you can see how it looks similar to this end. So now we have completed the second side, so we have 2 sides or 2 ends that look similar. We want to put the headband together. You want to make sure that you don't twist the headband unless you want a twist in it, but I don't think this one needs a twist. The decorative double crochet cluster stitches are beautiful along with the beads, and so it's not really necessary. All right, so we're going to take this and we're going to put the beads on the inside, so that is the right side inside and the wrong side out. So with the right side facing in and the wrong side out, we're going to put the 2 ends of our headband together, and make sure you grab that longer end, and we're going to go in that first stitch and just stitch a slip stitch. Then we'll go in the next one and stitch a slip stitch. Then we'll go in the last one and stitch that string out of the way there, a slip stitch. Okay, and I always look at it, make sure it's nice and sturdy and it looks pretty, and I like the way it looks. And so we have these 2 ends here, and so what we need to do now is just take our needle and weave those in. And I like to kind of go back over those slip stitches a little bit because I don't want my headband to come apart. All right, now we'll do the other end, which I did save way too long of a tail, but it's okay. And again, I'm going to go over those slip stitches. Make sure they're holding nice and sturdy. Because again, we don't want our headband to come undone when we're wearing it because it's just too pretty. Alrighty, I always like to go through fibers of the yarn and the stitches and just make sure it's going to stay put. And clip. Alrighty, so now we'll just flip it over and we have a beautiful beaded boho headband.